Good afternoon and welcome to Los Angeles City College. My name is Camille Goulet and I'm one of the law faculty members here. So I'm one of the lawyers not running for office. We're so grateful to have our community members and our students here. And I'd like to take a moment to recognize especially the students from the student government and from the Pathway to Law Club who helped with the setup and arrangements for this event. Thank you so much. And now I'd like to introduce Rita Zwern, who will moderate.
Thanks, Camille. The League of Women Voters is a nonpartisan organization. We do not endorse candidates. However, we are a trusted source for information about issues and publish recommendations for ballot measures. For over 100 years, the League of Women Voters has been encouraging informed voters and encouraging voters to be informed and active participation in government. The League welcomes all genders, and new members are always welcome. The hallmark of democracy is the willingness of all members of our community to treat each other with courtesy and respect, not just the people we agree with. It's in that spirit that we're here to engage in a vital part of our democratic process, civilized discussion of the important issues that confront our communities. We're grateful to our co-sponsors, LA City College, the ACLUs of Southern California, District Attorney Accountability Coalition, and the National Alliance on Mental Illness. Thank you to the candidates and all of you for joining us. Let's begin by clarifying the difference between the city attorney and a district attorney. Both are elected positions that prosecute, but the city attorney handles all misdemeanor crimes such as DUIs, shoplifting, vandalism, etc., and municipal code violations occurring within the city of Los Angeles. The district attorney handles felony cases in Los Angeles County, as well as misdemeanors outside Los Angeles city limits in cities without their own city attorneys and in unincorporated areas. Further, the district attorney covers criminal matters, not civil court matters such as care court. During this forum, attacks of a personal nature, including private matters having no bearing on a candidate's public persona or ability to perform the duties of the office in a competent, ethical manner, will not be tolerated. If a candidate makes a personal attack during his or her remarks, the time required for me to interrupt the candidate and remind him of the rule will be taken from his or her own speaking time. The candidates for Los Angeles County District Attorney are Craig Mitchell, David Milton, George Gascon, Nathan Hochman, Deborah Archuleta, Jeff Chemerinsky, Eric Siddall, Maria Ramirez, Dan Kapelovitz, Lloyd Masson, and John McKinney. The 12th candidate, Jonathan Hatami, was invited to participate in the forum but was unavailable. There will be a total of 12 questions during the forum. Each candidate will be asked to respond to 3 of the first 11 questions. The first candidate will have 2 minutes to respond, and the other 2 candidates will have 1 minute each to respond. Every candidate will have the opportunity to respond first to at least one of the questions. The 12th and final question will be directed to all of the candidates, who will each have 1 minute to speak to any of the questions posed to other candidates. And following the question period, the candidates will be given 1 minute each for a closing statement. During the question period and the closing statements, our timekeepers will alert the candidates to the time remaining with signs of 1 minute, 30 seconds, 15 seconds, and then a stop sign when they are out of time. We'll now begin the question period. The first question is directed first to Mr. Mitchell. There are several diversion programs that the DA's office may take advantage of to reduce the criminalization of people experiencing mental health or substance addiction. What policies, if any, should the DA's office implement to ensure that these programs are used in a consistent and equitable manner? Mr. Mitchell, your 2-minute response, please.
Thank you. As a judge on the Los Angeles Superior Court for the last 18.5 years, I have firsthand experience granting mental health diversion. It is a program whereby if a person receives appropriate treatment, after 2 years of leading a law-abiding life and complying with that treatment, the criminal case is dismissed. The real challenge that is faced by any district attorney, any judge, is to make sure that the person receives appropriate treatment. The state legislature, obviously well-intentioned, created mental health diversion. But what they didn't follow up on was to make sure that mental health clinicians would be able to provide the services that people suffering from mental illness desperately need. And so I would absolutely make sure that all district attorneys assigned to courtrooms where mental health diversion is a possibility, that they receive treatment, or pardon me, that they receive the education necessary so that appropriate treatment can be provided. One of the things I confront as a judge, the attorneys come to me oftentimes saying, okay, this person suffers from methamphetamine-induced schizophrenia, for example, and they need to be in a particular program. I have the experience to know which programs sufficiently address that mental health condition and which do not. And that is absolutely essential if we are to take a person from suffering from mental illness to long-term wellness.
Thank you. Ms. Archuleta, your 1-minute response, please.
We have many useful tools in the diversion program arsenal. However, they're not being administered properly. My last assignment as a sitting judge was at the Edelman Children's Court. I was removing 10 to 15 babies at birth from their mother because they had methamphetamine and fentanyl in that newborn system. We need to force people that are addicted to substances into drug treatment programs. That has been changed recently. 30 seconds? Okay, I'll hurry up. Also, we have mental health diversion programs. We have too many violent criminals that are being given mental health diversion when in fact they're injuring and killing people on the streets of LA County. We need a whole reapplication of the diversion program. I'm a strong proponent of diversion programs, but they have to be properly and equitably administered.
Thank you. Mr. Kobelovich, your 1-minute response, please.
All right, thank you. Yes, I am in total favor of diversion programs. I'm a criminal defense attorney, so I deal with this all the time. I too understand all the programs. The presumption should be diversion. Having a conviction on your record can ruin your life, keep you from jobs, education, immigration consequences. So the presumption, especially for a first-time offender, should be diversion. My office would not fight righteous mental health diversion motions, drug treatment programs. I agree with Judge Mitchell that they haven't been funded, these programs. So often you're waiting for months for a bed. And so some my clients just take the prison time instead of wait to get a bed, when really it would be much more beneficial to get a program. Thank you.
Thank you. The second question is directed first to Mr. Milton. In what instances, above and beyond the statutory law, would you deny eligibility for mental health diversion? Mr. Milton, your 2-minute response, please.
I served in public service for 36 years. 24 years as a judge, 12 years as a prosecutor. And from time to time, the mental health issues are part of the caseload or special assignment caseload. And you want to consider the reports from professionals, the psychiatrists, the psychologists, those who have had a chance to have a hands-on contact with the accused or the patient. Sometimes they're one and the same. And I think the question is, when would I not follow? Is that what the question is?
And what would you deny eligibility for mental health division?
Well, if it's been brought to my attention by clear and convincing evidence that there's some malingering involved here, meaning faking, then, and based on professional reports, then I would deny mental health diversion. But I agree with mental health diversion. It's something that's workable. It's a lot of times patients have long-term chronic disabilities and they need diversion. All the programs that we can offer them is often beneficial, and it's most likely, in my view, just better than incarceration without any treatment. That's the last thing I would suggest, incarceration without treatment. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Chemerinsky, your 1 minute response, please.
Great. Thank you so much. I'm Jeff Chemerinsky. It's great to see you all. And thank you again so much to our host for hosting this event. I'm a strong believer in mental health diversion programs. I think they're extremely important, and I think they should be utilized. But of course, I also favor a balanced approach, and they're not to be utilized in every single case. So what cases and what factors would I look at? I'd look at a number of factors. First, I'd look at the crime charged. The seriousness of the offense, I think, has to be the first guiding factor. But I'd also want to look at the history of the offender. Is there a significant criminal history? Is there a history of prior punishment, the history of prior diversion programs that have been attempted and failed? Is there something new we could attempt? In other words, I really would leave all relevant factors on the table and take a case-by-case approach. So is it really someone who could benefit from diversion, who deserves diversion, and where diversion can make a really positive impact? I wouldn't have a categorical rule, but I would look to all the factors in favor of a balanced approach while also really favoring mental health diversion. I think it's really important. Thank you again so much.
Thank you. Mr. Masson, your 1 minute response, please.
Thank you. Hello, everybody. My name is Lloyd Bobcat Masson. I'm a cold case prosecutor. In answering this question, I think we need to go back to 2020 and around that time. And around that time, the public made clear that they want to see something different from law enforcement. They want a complete remaking of the system in many ways. And I think mental health is actually a cornerstone of what we need moving forward if we're going to make a new justice system that functions for everybody. I think we also need to beef up the types of diversion that we can have using the new technologies that we have, new types of cognitive therapy, and things of that nature. But most importantly, I think we need to balance compassion, because LA can be a cold town and law enforcement can be cold sometimes and historically. But I think we need balanced compassion with public safety. We need to look at each individual carefully and say, does this person present a risk to the public? And that comes first, public safety, and then secondarily, compassion.
Thank you. The third question will be directed first to Mr. Gascon. There is no law requiring a prosecutor to ask for the death penalty. It's at the discretion of the prosecutor. What criteria do you believe the district attorney's office should establish as to when, if at all, the death penalty should be requested? Mr. Gascon, your 2 minute response, please.
The utility of the death penalty has been determined to be not anything that we want to use in a modern society. And let me tell you why. First of all, we know that the death penalty does not deter crime. Secondly, we know that the death penalty is horribly expensive. Thirdly, we know that the death penalty, as has been applied in this country and certainly in this county, has been extremely discriminatory. And then finally, we know that the death penalty is irreversible. So if we make a mistake, there will not be any way to fix the problem. If you look at my office in the last 3 years, we have exonerated several individuals, some of which the office thought to obtain the death penalty. Fortunately, that did not occur. And years later, we determined that they were factually innocent. If we executed those individuals, we would have executed an innocent person. It is true that the death penalty is still on the books, but it's also true that as a prosecutor, we have the discretion to use it or not to use it. Increasingly, when you go around this country and certainly around the world, the death penalty is not being used. And it's not being used for the very same factors that I mentioned earlier. In LA County, the death penalty was brought in front of the voters and it was defeated. So the reality is that the utility of the death penalty is long gone. It should have never been there. And certainly as a prosecutor, I do not use it. We have made a policy that we will not use the death penalty and we'll continue to set that policy.
Thank you. Mr. Siddall, your 1 minute response, please.
Thank you. I would also not seek the death penalty. I've never sought the death penalty in any of my cases. And the reason I'm not going to seek the death penalty is because it does not work as a deterrent effect. Punishment should serve two purposes. One is a form of retribution. The other is to deter. When you do not have a death penalty, we do not have a death penalty chamber here in California. It serves no deterrent effect. I have the privilege and honor of prosecuting a case of murder of an LAPD officer. That man was originally sentenced to death in 1985. His co-defendant was also sentenced to death in 1985. Neither of them were executed. The death penalty is a very expensive piece of paper. It is useless. And like Mr. Gascon said, it is absolutely within 100% the discretion of the district attorney. So don't let anyone tell you that's what the law is, so that's what they have to do. It's 100% in our discretion.
Thank you. Mr. McKinney, your 1 minute response, please.
Thank you. My name is John McKinney. I've been a deputy district attorney for 25 years. The utility of the death penalty is for the voters to decide, not district attorneys. District attorneys are duty-bound and sworn to follow the law. And as a district attorney, I will follow the law whether I personally agree with it or not. Now, with regard to the death penalty, to the extent that it's sought, it should be extremely rare. It should be with great reflection, and it should be a result of the meetings of the minds of a collective of people who have a lot of experience in the criminal justice system. There are some cases that are just so heinous. There are cases in which multiple lives are taken for the most cold-blooded and sadistic reasons that voters have repeatedly gone to the ballot box and said, we want to keep this as an option.
Thank you. The fourth question will be directed first to Mr. Hochman. There's a widespread public perception that retail theft is on the rise, despite research and statistics that suggest otherwise. In your view, how big a problem is retail theft in actuality, and what do you consider to be the root causes? What steps should the DA's office be taking to address the problem and/or the perception? Mr. Hochman, your 2 minute response.
Certainly. My name is Nathan Hochman. I thank you very much for inviting me to this forum. In this case, when it deals with retail theft and property crimes, perception is reality and reality is perception. Since the current administration has taken office, property crimes in this county have increased by double digits in 2021, by double digits in 2022, and over 24% in 2023. So when people say that these statistics are not correct, the statistics actually are correct when it comes to retail crime. And it's actually 2/3 of the people here in this county have been polled and said that they feel less safe today than they did 3 years ago. And again, it's not just a psychological feeling. People in this room probably know someone, if they haven't experienced it themselves, that have been robbed in their homes, in their cars, at a store. People understand that this is, again, not just some feeling, something that the media has created, but an actual escalation of crime. Now you ask what is responsible for it. There are multiple factors responsible for it, but one in particular deals with the DA's office and policies, for instance, with juveniles that have said that this office will not prosecute misdemeanor theft against a juvenile, full stop. That is, in essence, putting a license or a sign on a store saying, please steal me if you're under 18 and come in and have your way. It just is. And we saw recently in Compton, on January 2nd at 2 in the morning, that at Reuben's Bakery, a 13-year-old backed a Kia into the iron grate, and they estimated over 100 juveniles went in and stole and ransacked a 48-year-old institution's inventory.
Thank you. Ms. Ramirez, your 1 minute response, please.
Yes, thank you. My name is Maria Ramirez. Thank you for having me. I also think that retail theft is not only a public perception of its increase. You only need to watch the evening news to see the increase in retail theft that is reported almost on a daily basis. And if you don't believe the media, all you have to do is talk to your neighbors and people that you know that are business owners and the losses that they are facing every single day. The causes are probably very widespread, but one of the responsibilities of the district attorney's office is that we have to prosecute crimes. We have to prosecute misdemeanors and the quality of life crimes that affect our neighbors every single day. And if we fail at doing that very important job, that is why you are seeing this increase. There are no consequences for repeat offenders who commit these thefts over and over again. And in addition, the new bail system also does not account for repeat offenders and being able to keep them in custody. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Mitchell, your 1 minute response, please.
I would concur with the other candidates who have spoken. Retail theft is real. You go into any CVS, Ralph's in certain neighborhoods, a good portion of the merchandise is now locked away. You have to go and get someone to open the cabinet to get a tube of toothpaste. Retail stores are not engaging in those expensive upgrades, so to speak, unless it was real. As Ms. Ramirez indicates, under Prop 47, you can steal under $950 worth of merchandise over and over and over again, and it will never be anything more than a misdemeanor. And if the district attorney's office then decides that it is not going to prosecute misdemeanor thefts, as one of my colleagues just represented, it is open season.
Thank you. Question 5 will be addressed first to Ms. Archuleta. In determining what charges and punishment should be sought in each criminal case, the district attorney must weigh the rehabilitative value of providing programs and services to the defendant against society's demand for accountability. To do so, the DA must take into consideration such factors as the defendant's age, past criminal behavior, how incarceration may defer future criminality, etc. How do you or would you balance rehabilitative programs and services with accountability in determining a sentence? Ms. Archuleta, your 2 minute response, please.
Thank you. Both as a prosecutor and now as a judge for the LA Superior Court, instead of having blanket policies that have been implemented, we need individualized justice for every person that comes before the court, be them a juvenile offender, be them an adult offender, be them a low-level offender, or be a violent criminal offender. When we're talking about rehabilitation versus imposing accountability and consequences, a lot of you are young people here at this college. I took Spanish classes here many years ago. It's great to be back. But if you would have gone into the store and stolen something more than a Snickers bar, I bet someone had a parent, a grandparent, a coach, or somebody who would have said something about it, and you would have had a consequence for your action. We need to look at rehabilitative options for those that need rehabilitation. If you are addicted to drugs, you need rehab, you don't need custody. However, if you're selling the drugs to our young people, pregnant women like I see in my court, you need some level of custodial accountability when you are selling those drugs, because you're killing our babies, our young people, and these poor people living on the streets of Los Angeles. We have to look at the age of the offender. We have to look at past behavior because, ladies and gentlemen, past behavior helps determine future criminality moving forward. Incarceration is an option of last resort. So you have to have, if you have a violent, serious repeat offender who's using a gun, who's selling drugs to a pregnant woman, who is preying upon our most vulnerable citizens, be them children, be them the elderly, be them those engaging in hate crimes, those need to be considered for potentially a period of incarceration, looking at the prior criminal history, how many times they've been given an opportunity to successfully complete diversion, probation, and or parole. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Kapelovich, your 1 minute response, please.
All right, thank you. Yeah, my name is Dan Kapelovitz, rhymes with the Helovitz, in case you can't pronounce it. And yes, I believe, well, day one in law school and criminal law, you learn there's 4 reasons for punishment: incarceration, deterrence, retribution, and rehabilitation. Now, someone mentioned retribution. I'm against retribution. I don't believe that 2 wrongs make a right, an eye for an eye. So really, the goal of punishment is rehabilitation is the best thing. And that's not mutually exclusive with accountability. You can be accountable and not thrown in prison or jail. I'm against enhancements in almost every case. Every case is different, but we have to make sure that similarly situated people are treated the same, not based on their race or sex, religion or gender or anything, or based on where in the county. You'd be surprised at the differences of, say, San Fernando or downtown or airport or anywhere. Everyone should be treated the same. And so I think
thank you.
You gotta stop.
Mr. Milton, your 1 minute response, please.
The question concerned charging, like filing a charge and sentencing. On filing of a charge, any charge, the determination is objective, whether or not the charge or the crime can be proven beyond a reasonable doubt. If it can be proven beyond a reasonable doubt, it should be charged. It's statutory. The second aspect is sentencing. You take it as a judge, having been a judge for 24 years and a prosecutor for 12, you look at the factors such as lack of criminal history, the egregiousness of the crime, public protection. Those are the deterrence. Those are the types of things that you consider when you're charging and or sentencing. I follow the law in those areas.
Thank you. Question 6 will be directed first to Mr. Chemerinsky. Restorative justice provides opportunities for victims or survivors, people who commit crime, and communities affected by a crime to communicate directly or indirectly about the causes, circumstances, and impact of that crime, and to address their related needs. Under what circumstances, if any, would you use the restorative justice process to hold someone accountable for causing harm? Mr. Chemerinsky, your 2 minute response, please.
Thank you. I think restorative justice is extremely important, and I think restorative justice courts have a definite place in our criminal justice system. As a federal prosecutor, as a deputy chief, and then chief of the Violent and Organized Crime Section, I worked a lot with victims, and I understand the trauma that victims feel. I also understand that restorative justice offers many victims, but not all victims, a chance to confront their accuser in a way that's less adversarial, in a way that could make them more whole than a normal justice system. Now, in terms of specifics, which I think the question calls for of when I would use restorative justice courts, I'd really have a system in which you need both the defendant and the victim to opt into a restorative justice system. I think that you need cooperation from both parties in order for it to work. I think that when both parties can come together for a restorative justice court system, you really could do a tremendous amount of good, but you need both parties to decide jointly that it's what they want. And again, it's not going to be every case. There will be a number of cases and fact patterns where you can't use restorative justice, where the crime is so severe or the victim wants a different type of justice, or the defendant doesn't want a restorative justice court and you can't use restorative justice. But in a number of instances, I do think restorative justice has a certain place and I would be active in using it.
Thank you. Mr. Masson, your 1 minute response, please.
I think the key with any of these type of policy questions is that we have to be careful to balance everything. You can't be too hot on something. You can't be too cold on something. In this particular instance, if the crime itself is too heinous, it can even be too sensitive to even approach victims to ask about restorative justice. So in those sort of situations, I wouldn't be seeking to do something restorative. But in many cases where we have medium and low level crimes, restorative justice, I do think, is something important for the future, but it does have to be victim centric. We need to ask the victim if they're comfortable with it, what can be done, and so forth. But more important to all these matters is we need to get to the root cause of crime. We can't just keep treating the symptoms over and over on the outside. We need to get back to the origin of it and begin to work there. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Gascon, your 1 minute response, please.
Restorative justice requires that all the parties involved agree to the process. So first of all, it has to be victim-centric, and the first question is always going to go to the victim to determine whether he or she agrees. Secondly, you have to go to the person that is being accused, and you have to determine whether that person is ready to accept responsibility. Part of restorative justice is actually you're not contesting whether the person is guilty or not, you're actually dealing with an acceptance of responsibility. Then you bring all the people together, and the outcome has to be one that, number one, provides a reparation to the victim, and number two, provides a path for the person that is accused to hopefully not reoffend again.
Thank you. Question 7 will be addressed first to Mr. Siddall. The district attorney is often at the table with other government departments and stakeholders when decisions are being made about reforming our criminal legal system. As district attorney, how would you use your position of influence to advocate for changes both inside and outside of the DA's office, such as in law enforcement, the public defender's office, and in the new Justice Care and Opportunities Department? Mr. Siddall, your 2 minute response, please.
Thank you. I think one of the reasons why this election is extremely important is because we are dealing with a lot of generational issues, and this is truly a transformative election. And I'm going to speak specifically as to one issue. It was kind of addressed earlier today, but this is where I think the district attorney can have a tremendous influence in the county of Los Angeles. And that is building the infrastructure of mental health. Because a lot of what you heard today is about programs and diversion programs, but no one is considering how do we actually build up the infrastructure so that we can actually treat mental health issues in this county. For example, and this is one of the most critical things that we need a 3,500 bed facility where people can be put into care, where they cannot just walk out. It's a secure facility where violent criminals are able to get the treatment that they need. That does not exist in Los Angeles. There were efforts about a decade ago to try to get it to be built. Right now in LA County, we have approximately 50 beds for people who are violent and mentally ill. That is not enough. I think the DA's office needs to take a leadership position on this issue. I think the DA needs to take a leadership position on this issue and actually build infrastructure so that we can have this type of lockdown facility. I'm not saying that we get rid of community-based mental health, but there has to be a secure facility where we put the most violent offenders who are part of this diversion process. And that's what I would do to build up our system.
Thank you. Mr. McKinney, your 1 minute response, please.
Thank you. The DA has enormous power. In fact, I think the DA is the most consequential elected official in Los Angeles County, but nothing gets done without partnerships, relationships, and collaboration. The DA has to work hand in hand, shoulder to shoulder with other elected officials, especially the Board of Supervisors. For example, I have a plan to go upstream and introduce early childhood education, crime prevention, and mentorship to our fifth graders, especially our boys. I will do that because our boys, especially our Black and Latino boys, end up coming into contact with the criminal justice system disproportionately higher when they become older teens and young men. How do I get that done? I have to go to each board of supervisor and sit down with her and say, this is what I want to do in your district. Make it about the other elected official. Make it make sense to them.
Mr. Hochman, your 1 minute response, please.
Thank you. It's good to have plans, it's good to have ideas, but who actually has the experience of negotiating at the highest levels with other stakeholders in the system? I have 34 years of criminal justice experience, and part of that was as a presidentially nominated, unanimously Senate confirmed Assistant Attorney General of the U.S. Department of Justice. I had to deal in that position with the White House, with Congress, with the U.S. Department of Justice, with 94 different U.S. attorneys' offices across the United States in order to get my ideas, my plans affected, and I did. As DA, you cannot give up the microphone, the bully pulpit, if you want to get something done with homelessness, with organized retail crime, or with fentanyl poisoning. You have to be able to know how to deal with the Board of Supervisors, with the mayor, with all the police chiefs and the sheriff as well. You need to have gone, as I have, up to Sacramento and be able to lobby, and you have to be able to pass propositions as well.
Thank you. Question 8 will be directed first to Ms. Ramirez. In what ways, if any, do you feel the DA's office could handle youth justice more effectively and compassionately? Ms. Ramirez, your 2-minute response, please.
Yes, I believe that youth justice is really where the DA's office could make a big difference in our reform efforts. It is in the juvenile justice system that many of us within the district attorney's office feel that we could make the most difference. But right now, our current juvenile justice division within the district attorney's office is very ill-staffed. We do not have the knowledge and training that we need to effectively roll out diversion programs for our youth on a wider scale. And it is with these individuals that I think we can make the most difference. When I heard about the robbery at the Rubens Bakery, when the 13-year-old drove the car into the store so that hundreds of thieves could run in and steal, all of us thought, what is happening? That 13-year-old is out there committing crime after crime. That was not his first crime. And we have failed that individual. However, we still have hope for that individual. And it is with these young individuals that are finding their way to a life of crime that we have to invest resources, whether there are diversion programs outside of the office. However, we are facing challenges with community-based diversion programs because they are often at capacity and we cannot send more individuals to them. So as district attorney, it is critical to advocate for funding for our own diversion programs so that we could expand those services to the youth that are coming before us. And in doing so, I think that we could make a very big difference, but we have to make our juvenile justice division a priority, and it is currently not.
Thank you. Mr. Mitchell, your 1-minute response, please.
Before going into the law, I was a high school teacher in Los Angeles for 17 years. So in terms of it having the experiential base to understand what leads a young person into achieving their potential or leads a person into a gang lifestyle and criminality, no one understands that better than myself. I taught at Sarah High School, I taught at Crenshaw High School, and the students at Crenshaw High School, I taught at the continuation school. They were all rolling 60 gang members. So I understand that mentality. I also have read, no matter how loud I shout, it is an extremely insightful book on juvenile criminality. 90% of juveniles who enter the system never reoffend. We have to look at the 10% who do and figure out what we can do to put them back on the right track.
Thank you. Ms. Archuleta, your 1-minute response, please.
Where was that 13-year-old's parents or grandparents? Why has this young child been co-opted by, frankly, fellow gang members? I've sat in the juvenile dependency court for the last 3.5 years at ground zero of everything that's going on. Our children are being kicked to the curb. Their parents are not being held accountable. I fight every single day to get these kids into school. We need community engagement. We need buy-in from the parents. These parents can't abandon these children when they're not the cute little puppies anymore and they become the mouthy teenagers that I'm sure everyone in this room was at one point in their lives. We need community engagements. We need buy-in from the parents that they must step up and be a parent to these children, because we're going to continue to lose children on the streets every single day on the city and county of Los Angeles. I was getting kids in foster care coming into my court with gunshot wounds.
Thank you. Question 9 will be directed first to Mr. Kapelovitz. It is the responsibility of the Conviction Integrity Unit to conduct good faith case reviews to ensure the integrity of challenged convictions and remedy wrongful convictions. In addition to claims of actual innocence of individuals currently in custody, how would you prioritize the reviews of other cases? Mr. Kapelovitz, your 2-minute response, please.
Well, factual innocence would be a very high priority, one of the highest, because we got to get people who are in prison for decades wrongly out of prison. I see someone's t-shirt over there, Free Antonio Chavez, and there's one right there. The DA's office often fights against resentencing. As a defense attorney, I get cases, you'd be surprised all the time. I was surprised where my client is factually innocent. I had one where all they had to do is watch the video and you could see that he was factually innocent. When they agreed to finally look at the video, they agreed and the case is dismissed, but that's after, it took some time. So we really, I was shocked at how many cases where my clients are factually innocent. I was like, isn't there real crime happening? Why do they have to go after people that are innocent? It makes me think there's no real crime. So that would be a high priority. We got to really look into it, put a lot of people into that department. And another thing is we need to hire more deputy district attorneys. Right now there's at least 200 vacancies and everyone's overworked, understaffed. The morale is down because they're so overworked. They can't even look into these cases. They can't even give us the police reports and discovery in time. And so people are languishing in jail. They either have to give up their speedy trial rights or not have a fair trial. So we need people so we can actually look into these cases and we really need to, and that's what we're saying. And now everyone's talking about upholding fentanyl dealers, charging them with murder. Well, if one person in my office falsely accuses someone and seeks the death penalty, which I would never seek, they should be charged with attempted murder. Thank you.
Thank you. Audience, please respect the time. Mr. Milton, your 1-minute response, please.
I'm the most experienced candidate here, 45 years as a lawyer, 24 as a judge, 12 as a prosecutor. I've had those instances where there's an allegation, writs are filed all the time suggesting that this person is factually innocent or there's been some impropriety in the process. As district attorney, there is no way in the world that I would ever deny a person the opportunity to be heard on real credible evidence. But I understand there are many instances where these things are fabricated. You can think of an instance, one anecdote where it might happen to be the person is innocent, but usually you have instances where it's fabricated. Someone attempts, a family member or friend is paid to come up with evidence to suggest that the prior conviction is not a proper conviction. You've got to be mindful for to these things.
Thank you. Mr. Chemerinsky, your 1-minute response, please.
Thank you, and I think it's an important question. Thorough and careful wrongful conviction review would be a top priority of my district attorney's office. One thing I learned as I talked to various communities in preparing to run for district attorney is that it hasn't been a priority of our district attorney. He hasn't carefully and quickly moved through wrongful convictions review. As district attorney, my promise to all of you and to the public is that it would be a top priority. My district attorney's office would have the gold standard in wrongful convictions review. It's an issue I care about deeply and personally. While in law school at Duke, I worked in the Duke Wrongful Convictions Clinic for a year and worked on an individual's claim of innocence. My wife, after she graduated from law school at Duke, came back and worked for 2 years at the Duke Wrongful Convictions Clinic. Her work actually led to an innocent person being exonerated. I told her at the time, 2 years after law school, she'd probably accomplish the pinnacle of her legal career. There's nothing more unjust than someone innocent serving any time in jail, and it would be a top priority for my district attorney's office.
Thank you. Question 10 will be directed first to Mr. Masson. What steps would you take, if any, to ensure that the charges levied and the sentences requested, in any case, are not negatively influenced by the race, ethnicity, or immigration status of the defendant? Mr. Masson, your 2-minute response, please.
I think in answering that question, we need to bring it back to the basics of the most important thing about the justice system is if you look at Lady Justice, she's blindfolded. And it should be that way too with any district attorney when they look at cases. Race, background shouldn't come into anything of the mind of the filing attorney whatsoever. Just the scales of justice, whether or not the crime's been committed or not. But at the same time, I think we need to recognize sins of the past, but find a way to break from it. And I think the way to break from it is to get rid of this constant you versus them or us versus them mentality between law enforcement and the community. As a cold case prosecutor, I'm at the cutting edge of technology that we have in law enforcement to solve cases more than 40 years old. So we can definitely solve who robbed the local liquor store last week. But in using that technology, there's also new things we can do. And to break down that wall, I think we need a new level of communication between the public that we serve so that we can start to tinker with and build trust within the communities that we serve. Furthermore, can I just add one thing? Furthermore, as it relates to this, I do think that me as a candidate, Bobcat, I have the character to be able to unite the different cities in the county so that we can get past race and come together in one unified effort to make this place safer. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Gascon, your 1-minute response, please.
I think a critical component of our work is to make sure that race does not play a role in how we prosecute cases. And that has been a major priority of my administration, and it will continue to be. And you look at, and the way that I look at this is in multiple levels. Number one is a legislative level, working in Sacramento to ensure that we reform the laws that have caused so much disparity in the way that we do our work. Secondly is within the office, is putting people in place that understand the import of our work and how race has impacted the work in the past. Thirdly is looking at wrongful convictions at resentencing, where we have seen clearly the impact of race and the outcome of our work. And finally is working with our community to ensure that we are very committed to taking race out of the equation when we're prosecuting cases, and when that is not the case, that they were being made aware. And we do this through our work with our community advisory groups, and we do this with many other organizations.
Mr. Siddall, your 1-minute response, please.
Thank you. There's two things I think that the DA's office can do better in terms of this issue. First of all, I think the DA's office needs to have more diversity, especially when it especially with Latino prosecutors. I was the vice president of the Latino Prosecutors Association. Latino prosecutors are very underrepresented in the DA's office. And so I think that's one of the things I would do. I would do that by also increasing the amount of paid internships in the DA's office so that people with different economic means can actually join this office, because many of you may not know this, but the way that a lot of deputy district attorneys get hired is through our internship clerkship program. So I would actually have paid clerkships. The other thing is I would increase implicit bias training. We had one a few years ago under Jackie Lacey. I don't think we've had one since. I think it is incredibly important to actually know where your bias is so that you can identify that.
Question 11 will be addressed first to Mr. McKinney. According to the Department of Justice, the overwhelming majority of criminal cases result in plea bargains, where a defendant agrees to plead guilty or no contest in exchange for the prosecutor dropping one or more charges, reducing a charge to a less serious offense, or recommending to the judge a reduced sentence. Some innocent people accept plea deals simply because they can't make bail and don't fall under these zero bail exceptions. In what ways can plea bargaining be reformed? Mr. McKinney, your 2-minute response, please.
Well, I've taken a position, I think, which is unique among the people at this table, is to move off of bail entirely. I think bail is an antiquated system. And like some other states, including my home state of New Jersey, we should dispense with bail and move to a true risk assessment system. A risk assessment system that uses a universal tool that will weigh relevant factors and inform a judge as to whether a person poses a risk to the community or not, because that's the central question involved in whether to detain someone pre-trial or not. Will releasing the person pose a risk to a particular victim or society? If not, and the person can be counted on to come to court, they should be released, period. Forget bail. And if they can't, I don't care how much money they have, they should have to fight their case from the inside. That's the system that we need to move to. With regard to plea bargaining, you know, it's been said that 90% of cases are plea bargained here in LA County and across the country. A plea bargain is an agreement where both sides are giving up something. Neither side is entirely happy with the result of a plea bargain because both are giving up something and agreeing to a particular outcome. Defendants are often asked by judges, are you accepting this plea bargain because you believe it's in your best interest? And the judge has to be satisfied that if the defendant says yes, that's true. And of course, judges ultimately have a say-so. If a judge doesn't like a particular plea bargain, the judge doesn't have to accept it. So I do believe that there are sufficient checks and balances in our system. Every defendant is represented by a competent attorney. The prosecution, I don't believe, is out to trick people into jail. That's not what we do.
Mr. Hoffman, your 1 minute response, please.
Certainly. As the only candidate here who's been both a prosecutor and a defense attorney, a plea bargain actually plays a very important role in the process, but it requires people on both sides of the aisle doing their job. You don't want the district attorney to be effectively on the defense side, and you don't want the defense attorney to effectively be a pawn of the prosecutor. Well, you actually have to have that experience. Our current DA has never personally prosecuted a case. He's never personally defended a case. So when it comes time for the plea agreement, again, the idea is that there should be no situation, and there hasn't been when I've been a defense attorney, where a defense attorney stands by and lets a truly innocent person plead guilty on their watch. That is the failure of the system. The judge should catch it. On the flip side, there should be no situation where a defense attorney doesn't challenge the evidence and make sure only admissible evidence would be brought in to convict someone, and then have that discussion that if someone has done it.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Ms. Ramirez, your 1 minute response, please.
Thank you. I also believe that plea bargaining is a very critical part of the criminal justice system. It allows the courts to move the cases through the court system and not overburden the courts that are already burdened by the number of cases that come before it. And I think what is critical in plea bargaining is making sure that the parties that are involved in plea bargaining have integrity. And that takes us back to the hiring process of who we hire as deputy district attorneys in our office. They must have the utmost level of integrity so that when we are engaging in plea bargain negotiations, we are doing honorably and in the best interest of the case, the victim, and for the criminal justice system. So that is important. Thank you.
Thank you. Question 12, the final question will be directed to all the candidates in the order in which they appear on this particular ballot. Each candidate will have 1 minute to address any question posed to another candidate. Mr. Mitchell, your 1 minute response.
Just so I do this right, I am to direct a question at...
No, you answer a question that was posed to any of the others.
Thank you. When I left the parking lot this afternoon and came to this event, I met one of the students. She asked if I was a candidate. I guess I looked like one. She indicated that about 6 months ago, she was right close to this school. She was approached by an individual and stabbed in the face. She indicated as well that the person who stabbed her minutes earlier up on Sunset had stabbed another man. She told me the sentence that this person received. If you stab someone in the face, that is mayhem. If you do it with the intent to permanently disfigure a person, that is a life sentence. The person who stabbed two people,
Thank you.
8 years.
Thank you. Mr. Milton, your 1-minute response, please.
I am about public protection, integrity, fairness, and that's what it's about. If a crime can be proven, it will be charged. If it can't, it won't be charged. One of the first inquiries I'd make as a judge in the years I was on the bench was when counsel would ask for leniency or those types of things for his client. My first inquiry is always, well, I want to know what happened to the victim. I'm here to protect the victim. I will get this office back to its core mission, which is public safety. That's the purpose for the district attorney's office, public safety, and that's what I'm about.
Thank you. Mr. Gascon, your 1-minute response, please.
You know, the achievement of safety for the community is one that requires that we look at each case, that we look at the people involved, and that we look at the tools that we have in order to provide the right level of intervention. There have been many questions here. We're talking about plea bargaining, for instance, but one of the things, for instance, when we talk about plea bargaining, we do not talk about the fact that we have a system that for generations have been very heavy on the overcharging of a case in order to have the defendant be in a place where they are going to agree to a plea because they're afraid that if for whatever reason they're found guilty, the consequences are going to be very severe. So one of the obligations of the prosecutor is to make sure that a case is not overcharged. The other obligation of the prosecutor is make sure that they are providing full discovery to the defense early on so that defense is able to make an educated decision as to whether someone is going to plead guilty or not.
Mr. Hoffman, your 1-minute response, please.
There is one issue that we haven't really talked about that will kill 6 people in this county today and every single day, and that's fentanyl poisoning. Fentanyl is not about getting high. 2 milligrams of fentanyl will kill you in 2 minutes. It's basically 2 grams of rice. It's the #1 killer of 18 to 35-year-olds. And if you don't know, as I have met parent after parent that has lost sons and daughters from fentanyl poisoning, it's exponentially growing. And in the next 4 years, you will absolutely know a family that has suffered the loss from fentanyl poisoning. We have to hold the people selling this fentanyl, knowing it is going to kill people, as murderers. The current DA will not do that. We also have to launch a massive education effort in the middle and high schools to target students and parents to say this is no longer about getting high. 7 out of 10 of those counterfeit pills that are out there, the DEA estimates have a lethal dose of fentanyl.
Thank you. Ms. Archuleta, your 1-minute response, please.
I'm going to talk about race. I was hired as a law clerk in 1989 for the district attorney's office in law school. No one really cared that I'm a Latina female when I got hired. We are making strides in race and in diversifying the office. Lady Justice is blind, ladies and gentlemen, but there is a history of racial inequality in our country. African-American women are murdered at 6 times the rate of white women. I'm a domestic violence survivor. I had brain surgery because I was a survivor of domestic violence. Hispanic Latino women are murdered at about 4 times the rate of white women. When I look around this room, everybody in this room has a mother, a daughter, a sister, an aunt, a girlfriend, a boyfriend, somebody who has been assaulted because with domestic violence, and it's a huge issue with race.
Mr. Chemerinsky, your 1-minute response, please.
Thank you. I'll respond to question 7 about criminal justice reform. First, I want to make very clear, my #1 priority is public safety. It's the #1 job of the district attorney to keep our public safe and to hold people accountable, to work with law enforcement every single day as a partner to hold people accountable and prosecute crimes. But I also do believe in criminal justice reform. Mass incarceration does not work. Warehousing people is not the solution to our crime problems. But I think with our current district attorney, we've seen that criminal justice reform done wrong sets the whole movement back. Our current district attorney has become polarizing and isolated. To give a few examples, just 2 weeks ago, there was a headline about a $5 million civil rights lawsuit paid out by the county based on right-wing conspiracy theories that were charged by the district attorney's office. Our DA still hasn't explained that. Finally, I would note that I've been endorsed by civil rights lawyer and leader Connie Rice, who talks about the type of reformer I would be.
Thank you.
Someone who could collaborate and work with others.
Thank you. Mr. Siddall, your 1 minute response, please.
Thank you. I'll discuss restorative justice because I think it's something that is not discussed very often. I convicted a man about 8 years ago for murder and with a gun allegation. That man committed a murder when he was 19 years old. He was sentenced to 40 to life. We kept track of him. We continue to look at and monitor how he was doing while he was in state prison. I contacted the family of the victim. I told the family of the victim he's doing extremely well. He actually was one of the rare defendants who actually apologized for what he had done to the victim's family. The victim's family came into court and advocated for his gun allegation to be dismissed and his sentence to be reduced by 25 years to life. That is restorative justice. But that restorative justice only occurs when the victims are made whole and when the victims have a say in our system. And that's what I'm going to do as your DA.
Thank you. Ms. Ramirez, your 1 minute response, please.
Thank you. I would like to talk about punishment and the question about rehabilitation and accountability, and how do we do that effectively? I grew up in Boyle Heights, an area riddled with violent crime. And I was very close to my community. And really, when you talk to people in LA County, everybody wants to feel safe. They want there to be accountability, but they also want it to be done fairly and equally. And the district attorney's office prosecutors need to have the flexibility to be able to charge and sentence as appropriate, knowing what the person is all about, knowing their criminal history, their social history. And we have to have that ability to do that. In resentencing, we have to know the person's conduct in custody so that we can feel comfortable if we're letting that person out. Currently, our prosecutors' hands are tied. We do not have the ability to evaluate each case on a case-by-case basis. And I think that is very critical, and that is what is missing right now.
Thank you. Mr. Kapelovich, your 1 minute response, please.
Thank you. The criminal legal system is racist. People of color are stopped more than so-called white people by police, searched more, arrested more, charged more, overcharged more, convicted, often wrongly convicted, than so-called white people. And we need to change that. The death penalty, the Supreme Court says it's okay that if you kill a white person, you're more likely to get the death penalty than if you kill a black person. That is wrong. That's just one reason against the death penalty. And gang enhancements, they are racist. If someone charged with burglary, if they're black, it's going to be for the benefit of the gang. If they're white, it's just going to be a burglary.
Thank you.
I think I have 15 seconds.
Oh, sorry. I thought you were done.
All right. And yeah, I'm the only candidate here. I'm a criminal defense attorney. I'm the only one in the county courts all over the county every day. I see what's going on. I am appointed by the court to represent indigent defendants, and 90% of them are people of color.
Thank you. Sorry for the interruption. Mr. Masson, your 1 minute response, please.
Thank you. I want to respond to the conviction integrity unit, the review of that. Ladies and gentlemen, I think right now we're at a unique time in LA history. Everybody in the public wants to see something different from law enforcement. And I think there's a unique opportunity then for a candidate to unite LA, for somebody that's going to bring us together and say, hey, we have mutual interests, both in law enforcement functioning correctly and also the justice system delivering to you guys what you want. I think conviction integrity strikes at the heart of that, because the public's confidence in justice can be seriously harmed by instances where it doesn't look like we got it right. This also sits close to my heart. Even sitting at a red light for too long, I can get irritated when you miss it. Just imagine spending years in prison for something you didn't do. I was part of the Innocence Project for over 1 year, and I'd like to say that no human endeavor is perfect, but I think that we, as the justice system, can get it right. And we need to showcase to the public that we care about this earnestly. And as the only candidate that's embedded with a law enforcement unit right now, I know how to do this and keep our justice partners happy. And I think this is what we need in the future.
Thank you. Mr. McKinney, your 1 minute response, please.
I got the last place on the ballot, huh? tough spot. I want to talk about race. Obviously, I'm an African-American male. I grew up in poverty. I've been pulled out of a few cars by police officers and sat on the corner. So I'm very sensitive to how the criminal justice system interfaces with us on the basis of what we look like. The good news I have for you is that your local LA County criminal justice system is pretty good when it comes to race. I'm not going to say it's perfect, but it's good. And the reason it's good is not just because we have great prosecutors who look like the community, but we also have outstanding defense attorneys like Mr. Kapelovitz and public defenders who stay on top of these cases to make sure that there's no injustice. We also have one of the most diverse benches in the country, judges who look just like the community. We're all watching each other, ladies and gentlemen. So I know.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Now that concludes the question period, but I have some good news for the candidates. Because they were very respectful of each other's time, we are actually have a few minutes extra. So somebody's throat. Didn't see that coming. So instead of a 1-minute closing, each candidate will now have a 2-minute closing statement. Mr. Mitchell, your closing statement, please.
Thank you. I am known in the community as the running judge. 13 years ago, I founded the Skid Row Running Club to help people who are experiencing homelessness, addiction, and mental illness. Unfortunately, as I look around the audience this afternoon, 3 of my runners are in this room. Damien, could you raise your hand? Moses, Alex. I could get up here and tell you about the wonderful things I'm going to do and why I'm the right choice. But ask people who are with me every Monday, Thursday, and Saturday for the last 13 years. I've taken off the judicial robe, put on the running shoes. I have committed 13 years of my life to helping people restore their lives. One of the proudest individuals attended this school when they were in recovery. His name is Ben Shirley. He was a heroin addict. He was homeless. Last week, he was at the Grammy Awards because he was nominated for a Grammy. Those are the dramatic restorative changes that can happen if you roll up your sleeves, are willing to work with people on a sustained basis and improve their lives. That is what I have done, and don't take my word for it. Talk to the people who are my friends from Skid Row. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Milton, your 2-minute closing statement, please.
Thank you. I want to tell you about myself. I'm one of the most fair-minded people you'll meet in your entire life, and let me explain why. I grew up in Indiana in the 60s and 70s. I grew up in a Judeo-Christian family. The 60s and 70s, the country was racially tense during that time, and I suffered a lot of those indignities that just occurred during that time. So many years later, I'm here in California. Those things about the indignities that I suffered, coupled with the growing up in the Judeo-Christian family, they made me a man of integrity, character. There's no way that I would ever be unfair to anyone. What it has caused me to be is insensitive to injustices, absolutely insensitive. And as a consequence, go to my website, miltonforda.com, and you'll see number one on my platform, hate crimes. Hate crimes. Do you know what hate crimes mean? Any crime motivated because of a person's skin color or their religion or their gender That's what I'm about. I'm protective of that. I'm very sensitive about that. These are things that ought to be filed in the DA's office today, and they're not being filed. There's an order that they not be filed. Now, if I'm the district attorney, if there is a hate crime enhancement that I could prove, it will be filed because I'm about fairness. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Gascon, your 2-minute closing, please.
You know, I'm the only person in this table today that has worked in just about every part of the system. I started after getting out of the U.S. Army as a police officer, and I went through the ranks of the LAPD all the way to becoming assistant chief. Then I was a chief of police of 2 different cities, and then I became a district attorney. I understand the system from one end to the other. I have been committed to public safety my entire adult life. Having said that, there is also a recognition of the failures of the system. And that is part of the work that I have engaged in and will continue to engage in. While it is true that crime is down, there is also true that there are certain crimes that need attention, and we're paying attention to those. I am the only candidate here who has been endorsed by the Democratic Party. I have been endorsed by the Labor Federation of the county. I have been endorsed by most of the Democratic clubs. In fact, over 20, only 2 did not endorse me, and by most labor unions. But most importantly, I was endorsed by the LA Times. And let me tell you why I consider that to be such an important endorsement. The LA Times interviewed each of the candidates in this race, and they went about fact-checking their claims. And what they did, as they went through the claims that were being made by the various candidates, they determined those that were not telling the truth or that were stretching some of the facts. And at the end of the day, they came back and they endorsed me, and they endorsed me with a very clear message, where they compare and contrasted my work against those that are running against me. I urge you to look at the facts. I urge you to look at the LA Times endorsement, and I look forward to continuing to serve this community.
Thank you. Mr. Hochman, your 2-minute closing statement, please.
Thank you. As I go up and down this county and I talk to people across the geographic, demographic, and political spectrums, there is one constant refrain that they say to me: enough is enough. People are tired of living in fear. They are tired of having their homes broken in, their cars broken in. They're tired of being unable to go into parks and subways. And fear, that pervasive sense of fear, is what is driving people away from Los Angeles County. To actually be a great DA and to beat the incumbent, you need to have 5 things. And I'm the only candidate with all 5. You need criminal justice experience. Not just being a police officer and not just being a DA, you need to be a prosecutor. And I was one for 7 years. You need to be a U.S. Assistant Attorney General. And I did that with a presidential appointment. You need to be the head of 2 major international law firms' government investigations practice. I did that. You need to be the president of the LA City Ethics Commission. That was me. And you need to be the co-founder of the LA Sheriff's Foundation. That was myself as well. I'm the only candidate that can bring that combination of experiences to the fore to be a great DA and beat this current DA. I also have the proven leadership experience. I have the endorsements. They range from Steve Cooley, the former LA DA, 5 LA U.S. attorneys, and even Michael Harris, the founder of Death Row Records. But you also need to have independence and fundraising abilities. I'm a registered independent, because I believe in this nonpartisan race where party affiliation will actually not be even on the ballot, that being fiercely independent and not controlled by the Democratic Party is incredibly important to convince people in this district that you're going to make the calls on liberty based on the facts and the evidence alone. That is how I will be a great DA. That is how I will beat the incumbent.
Ms. Archuleta, your 2-minute closing statement, please.
Are we safer now than we were 3 years ago? By and large, most people think we are not. I alluded earlier to the fact that I am a survivor of domestic violence. In fact, it's what started me on my path to working on behalf of victims of violent and serious crimes. I went to community college. I went to Fullerton College. I made coffee and copies for the lawyers, and I typed my way through community college. I transferred to UC Irvine. I got a degree in economics. I can't balance my checkbook, but I got a great degree from a great university. I spent 26 years as a DA and 7 years as a judge. Other than the incumbent, I'm the only candidate in this race that has successfully won a county-wide election. The key for our future, including many of you here today and many of those of you with children and grandchildren, is we need education, we need opportunity. My grandparents were born in New Mexico. They hardly ever spoke English. My grandmother was a maid and a cleaning lady. My grandfather picked fruit, was a tailor, a mason, a laborer. They had 4 children during the Depression. My dad grew up in Colorado in a house with dirt floors. My dad served in the US Army in 1951 in the coldest winter in Korea, where he earned a Purple Heart, and he was in a month in a foxhole in 1951. I am 2 generations from my grandmother who scrubbed floors and toilets. And I am an elected Superior Court judge. Every day in my court, I tell the kids, look at me. I keep a sponge on my bench. I went to community college. I'm a DV survivor. I'm a woman of color. And if I can do it, I didn't go to fancy law schools. I didn't have presidential appointments. I just had me and my grandparents and my father. That's why I'm sitting up here today, because I stepped down from the bench on an unpaid leave of absence to step up for every single one of you in this room. So thank you for having me today.
Thank you. Mr. Siddall, your 2-minute response, please. Oops, I'm sorry, Mr. Shipmansky. I'm sorry.
It was a joke, ma'am. I was just making.
Excuse me. Audience, please. Mr. Shemerinsky, your 2-minute response, please.
Thank you. Thank you again to our hosts and to all of you for coming today. I think this is an incredibly important.
No, I didn't say that, ma'am.
Stop the timing on Mr. Shemerinsky.
I was making a joke. Apparently you didn't like it. I apologize.
I will vouch for her. She can add and subtract.
Thank you.
Mr. Shemerinsky, your 2-minute closing statement, please.
Thank you again. I'm Jeff Chemerinsky, and I'm running for District Attorney of Los Angeles. I've spent the last 9.5 years as a federal prosecutor, as an assistant United States attorney here in Los Angeles. I rose up in the violent and organized crime section at the United States Attorney's Office to be a deputy chief and then chief of the violent and organized crime section of the United States Attorney's Office. In that role, I oversaw all violent and organized crime and gang prosecutions for the federal government, not just for LA County, but for LA County and 6 other counties, a population of 19 million people total. I worked on pretty much every type of violent crime case there is, and I worked successfully with law enforcement to hold the worst of the worst, the most dangerous people accountable each and every day. I left that role to run for district attorney. I launched this campaign in mid-September, and I'm now, I believe, the leading Democrat challenger to George Gascon. I put together the type of coalition that makes me the top challenger to George Gascon. I'm the only challenger who's been endorsed by Democratic clubs. The New Frontier Democratic Club, which is the Black Democratic Club here in Los Angeles, has endorsed me for district attorney. I've been endorsed, as I said, by the leading civil rights attorney, Connie Rice. I've been endorsed by the Heart of LA Democratic Club, which is the feminist Democratic Club. I've been endorsed by current and former elected officials. I've been endorsed by the city attorney of Los Angeles, Heidi Feldstein Soto. I've been endorsed by Councilmember Bob Blumenfeld, by former state senator Bob Hertzberg. I've also been endorsed by the League of Conservation Voters, the leading environmental advocacy organization in our area. Their endorsement speaks to the type of environmental leader and prosecutor I would be. I'm very proud of that endorsement. I believe that I can be a better and more effective prosecutor and a better and more effective reformer than our current district attorney. I would love to have your support. Thank you all again so much.
Thank you. Mr. Siddall, your 2-minute closing statement, please.
Thank you, everyone, for coming tonight. Like I said at the very beginning of this evening, I do believe that this is one of the most important elections for our county. I believe it is a transformative election. I believe that there are generational issues that have to be dealt with. I represent a new generation of prosecutors, one that does not want to turn back the clock like many of the people up here, but one that also recognizes that the current direction of the DA's office, staying in place with the current direction, is also not working. That there are ways that we can actually reduce levels of violence in our community by being more focused, by being targeted, by actually having smart justice, that we can actually reduce levels of violence while also not increasing levels of incarceration. I believe I am the only candidate that has actually talked about mental health and how we need to rebuild our infrastructure in our mental health institutions to be able to actually deal with this generational problem. In terms of homelessness, the only candidate that actually has a plan of actually engaging the district attorney's office on the issue of homelessness. You can read all about it at ericfordda.com. Please visit the website to get more specifics as to these issues. I believe I have not just the prosecutorial experience in terms of being one of the leading prosecutors in my office, but also the institutional knowledge to be able to make these changes both within the district attorney's office, but also throughout the state. In other words, engaging with the Board of Supervisors and the state legislature, and I've done all of that. And together, I think we can actually make a better system that is more equitable, but also safer for us all.
Thank you. Ms. Ramirez, your 2-minute closing statement, please.
Thank you very much, everyone, for being here and for listening to us. My name is Maria Ramirez, and I am running for district attorney. I was born and raised in Los Angeles County. My parents immigrated here from Mexico to give our family a better life. They built a family business, which still exists today. I grew up in an area that was riddled with gang violence. I have a brother who was involved with getting stopped all of the time. So I understand the complexities of our communities. I understand that we want accountability, but we also want it to be fair. We want the criminal justice to be fair. I joined the district attorney's office more than 33 years ago. I have been a trial prosecutor working hand in hand with victims of crime and also with defense attorneys in making sure that we handled the cases fairly and equally. And eventually, after I was the trial attorney, I rose in the ranks of our office to become the first Latina head deputy district attorney and also the first Latina bureau director in our office. And I talk about that experience because it is critical to have strong leadership in the district attorney's office. And we do not have that right now. We all talk about and discuss reform measures. However, reform means that we make things better. Currently, there is a failed leader in our office leading the district attorney's office because he has failed to incorporate real reform into the everyday operations that we handle on the cases that we handle. And so as district attorney, based on my experience and my connection to our communities, I will be able to lead our office forward and to make actual change that will last long. And so I ask all of you for your support and thank you so much for having me.
Thank you. Mr. Kapelovich, your 2-minute closing statement, please.
All right, thank you. And thank you everyone for having me here. It's quite an honor. My name is Dan Kapelovich. I actually don't care how you pronounce it as long as you recognize it on the ballot. I am the most progressive candidate here. I am endorsed by, I'm only candidate endorsed by 2 of the 6 qualified political parties, the Green Party and the Peace and Freedom Party, and I'm working on another one. And now I am the most progressive. When I walked in here, I saw the top 5 demands by the DA Accountability Coalition, one of the hosts here. And this is my platform right here. You wrote it for me. I pledge to decarcerate. I pledge to treat kids like kids. Mr. Gascon has gone back on that policy a little bit. I pledge radical transparency in policies and data. This includes the Racial Justice Act, where they can get data of how we racially charge our cases. I believe to prosecute law enforcement for misconduct and brutality and killings. No one's above the law. And I pledge to protect immigrants from collateral consequences. I do that every day. And now you might think that Gascon is progressive, and he is. His directives are awesome. I read them. Some of them maybe I reword and make them a little bit different, add other ones. But he doesn't implement them because his line deputies, some of them here, are out of control. They do not listen to him. I was in Compton Courthouse the other day. There was a mustache drawn on Gascon's face. It was ridiculous. Come on. I'm going to hire people that believe in justice. A fourth of the office needs to be hired. They're all going to be justice-oriented attorneys. I think the DAs should get raises so we can compete with corporate law firms and hire the best and brightest. So I think don't think it's throwing your vote away. Vote your conscience. Don't worry, Gascon's going to be the top two. He's got the money. He's got that. Vote your conscience. Vote for me, and then we'll be the top two, and then you can really vote your conscience. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Masson, your 2-minute closing statement, please.
Thank you. The biggest question for everybody is what you guys are going to do. This is a historic election. There's never been so many candidates in a race for the DA's office, and now there's 12 of us, the same number that comprise a jury. And that's further compounded by the fact that you guys have a lot of good choices, particularly Mr. McKinney, a former elite DA with the Major Crimes Unit, and the other DAs here from LA. They've been brave enough to stand up to Gascon. But these are strange times, ladies and gentlemen, very strange times. We've never been here as a city like this. In strange times, I'm asking you to vote for a different type of candidate. And that's why I'm asking for you to vote for Bobcat. I earned that name by being tenacious in court and also feisty. And I will tell criminals directly to their face that playtime is over. But I'm also compassionate. It's not just an old school approach. Main thing is I want to end the nonsense. I'm the only candidate up here that is non-political. I'm the only one that's never been affiliated with any political party whatsoever. And that's what LA needs right now, is somebody that doesn't have a political ambition to move to some other office, but is going to put LA first. And that's what brings me to the forefront of all the candidates, is I have a heart for LA. I love this place. I love this county. And as a fourth generation Angelino, it's in my DNA. And we need somebody that's going to take this office, heal it, heal our relationship with our justice partners, and look forward to LA in 4 years and get this place ready for the Olympics. Because many people don't know, we've been here before in '84. And with it comes a security apparatus that we need to be careful how we use the resources that are going to be given to us as we prepare for the Olympics. And we need to get it right this time so that we don't infringe on people's rights, but we do make this place safer. This is an amazing opportunity. The current DA is asleep at the wheel. He's not going to take advantage of these things. We need a candidate that will and that can unite LA. And that's why I'm asking for your vote. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. McKinney, your 2-minute closing statement, please.
Thank you. And thank you all for being here. I'm running for one reason and one reason only, and that's to make meaningful change in Los Angeles County. And what I mean by that more specifically is no demographic is impacted by the criminal justice system more than African Americans, both as victims and offenders. Black women make up 1/3 of all female homicide victims in this county, despite being only 4% of the population. They also represent 1/3 of all aggravated assault victims, despite being 4% of the population. If you go over to our county jail right now, there's about 15,000 men in our county jail. While Black men only make up 4% of the population, they make up 30% of the county jail population. That is true today. That was true when Mr. Gascon took office. That was true for the DA before him and the one before her. It's time for meaningful change. In the 170-year history of the DA's office, there's never been a Black man to lead the office. And there's never been a Black man with the background that I have. My background is probably a lot like yours. I was born into poverty and then my mother died. I got to kindergarten and then my father died. I was raised during the crack cocaine epidemic where every day I had to run the gauntlet. Every day I had to cross a minefield of bad choices, but I did it. I know how to do it. I know what our young people are facing today. So when I tell you I'm not running to just be reactive to crime, I understand that we have to get upstream to our boys before they come into contact with negative ideas and negative people. That's where we win this in the long run. My name is John McKinney. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you. And that concludes our forum for this afternoon. First, we would like to thank all of these candidates for taking time out of their very, very busy schedules to share their views with us today. We would like to thank Stanley Wu and his team for providing audio and visual support. And a warm thank you to all of our co-sponsors, including ACLU Southern California, the District Attorney Accountability Coalition, Los Angeles City College, the National Alliance on Mental Illness of Los Angeles County and of Urban Los Angeles, the League of Women Voters of Greater Los Angeles and of Los Angeles County, and last but not least, to all of the volunteers who helped make this afternoon a success. Finally, we invite you to visit vote411.org for information on the upcoming election, March 5th, 2024. Thank you and good afternoon.